Welcome to Pax Europiana, the podcast about peace in Europe. And tonight in the Sunset Talk series here in Durres, I want to talk about Bulgarian, Macedonian issues because it's the most annoying issue currently. I'm really very upset personally. Hello, Bulgaria! Get a grip! I'm really very angry. And I call for Bulgaria. I don't call for the Sixth Navy because, I think we should be nice to each other because we are friendly and it's a NATO and the EU member. But this is the most outrageous thing I've ever experienced since a long time. What the Greeks did against Macedonia, there was at least, some emotional and some justification. Yeah, maybe. And North Macedonia, then the press for peace, much was achieved. But at the same time, let's not forget, in 2017, there was a friendship treaty agreed between Macedonia and Bulgaria. That was a big achievement. And all was principally fine, yeah. And then comes Bulgaria in this political crisis where they basically collapse dead and dissolve the political system in a kind of double elections, and they're unable to form any kind of government, and they are like completely nuts. And then they say, we are powerful enough because we invited you to join the European Union and NATO. You are then empowered or feel empowered in Bulgaria to block Macedonian start of negotiations. It's for me the most outrageous abuse of the power we vested in a country since a long time. And now Bulgaria asks you, yeah, what else you want? You want to respect? Once a time, in the first Bulgarian Empire in the 9th century, Durres was yours. Okay, good. Yeah, you want it back? We have to give it to you? I mean, have you lost your mind in Bulgaria? How dare you to do this? Yeah, it's so outrageous. Yeah, and I'm really angry with the Bulgarians, and I really regret. I have done a lot for Bulgaria. I was a small student representative. Nobody wanted to even touch Bulgaria. Nobody wanted to go there. I said, let's go to Bulgaria. Let's see what's going on there. In 96 we went. In 97 we went. In 98 we went. When you were like the most down country in Europe. I mean, my friends in EDS will still remember how terrible it was. Yeah. And we did everything, and the whole, and everybody in European politics said, okay, we have to help. Came the Kosovo War, Bulgaria was with us, yeah. Then you were allowed in NATO and in the EU, now in the Euro. And okay, it's not perfect, you should also be in the Schengen zone, in OECD, and you did the flat tax, there's a lot of good things, yeah, a lot of bad things. It's not so much about Bulgaria, you made also a lot of problems up there and gave the whole of EU enlargement a bad name. I made this long interview with, you remember, Professor Stanchev, and I'm trying to make also an interview with some university professors for history, because ultimately it's very complicated, and then everybody starts with some historic names nobody in Austria and Germany has ever heard of or would ever care. Gotche, Delchev, and all this is very important for Macedonia, for Bulgaria. I have a lot of respect for your particular history, and that's really important. But blackmailing other countries with EU accession blockades and vetoes because the power we vested in you because of membership, and then you say, oh no, no way, you cannot join. This is absolutely unacceptable, and it's absolutely beyond things I can accept. Yeah? And I think also in America and in Germany, a lot of people think like me. And I say just very clearly, let's come to the core of the issues. Yeah? In Europe, in Eastern Europe, in this power triangle between the Austrian Habsburg Empire of the past in the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire, and the Russian Empire, you can justify about every single border changes. Yeah? If we would go with the Bulgarian approach, half of the Balkans obviously would be Austrian, and then what you would say then in Bulgaria. I mean, this is not the way we can do business in the European Union in 2021. It's absolutely outrageous. I want to be very clear. So, what needs to be done is to settle all these issues, and obviously Macedonian is their own language. Yeah? You know, it's a bit different in Austrian German situation, Macedonia, and all the Slavic languages who have this kind of state-forming, state-national character. They will all have to be accepted. It's also for us, you know, it's a bit expensive ultimately to have Serbian, Croatian, Bosnian, Montenegrin, Ukrainian, you know, and Macedonian. You can make the case, yeah. But then let's start with the case of Bulgarian. You know, we also accepted that one. What's the difference with other Slavic languages if you want to go in this kind of brutal debate? Yeah, you want to go that? I don't think so. It's very annoying, and everybody has the right for its own language. Yeah, we Austrians, we have not. Okay. Yes, but you know, the Macedonians will have, and so will have the Serbians, the Bosnians, the Montenegrinians, and the Croatians have, and so on and so on, and the Slovenians, and the Polish, and the Czechs, and the Slovaks, yeah, and so it will be for the Ukrainians, etc., etc. I think I counted most of the different languages. They are very related. Good, and so is Italian and Spanish, and so is Portuguese and also Spanish. And still, you know, this is simply the reality of Europe, and that's the reality of Eastern Europe. So Bulgarians get a grip and get this settled and out of the way. The other thing is, you know, all the other things about history. Then, you know, you celebrate the 3rd of March, the San Stefano Treaty, which was a Russian invasion and liberation, you can say, and it was a fantasy treaty nobody ever accepted. And then we can fight about it today. Do we really want to fight about the 19th century Balkan borders today in the European Union? I mean, who can say this? Who can accept that? Who can, I mean, should we really go back in the 19th century German Empire borders, Austrian Empire borders, Bulgarian Empire borders, Russian Empire borders? I think it's totally ridiculous. Yeah? And also this whole historic personality things. Yeah? I have called many times now for both sides to make compromises. I say also the Macedonian way to celebrate all this partisan kind of culture, all this, you know, this revolutionary days, you know, all this anti-Bulgarian stuff ultimately is exactly as unnecessary today to celebrate the communist terminology and celebration days in Albania and in Macedonia. It must also be scrapped. Yeah? There's an Independence Day in Macedonia, that's the 8th of September. That's the day to celebrate the statehood, because before there was also no real independent Macedonia ever in the long-term history. It came to with the breakup of Yugoslavia, and that's the national day. And all the other days, you know, the Vimera Day, you know, that's a revolutionary movement of the 19th century. Do we need to celebrate that as a state holiday? I really don't think so. The 11th of October, the Partisan Day, I've said that in television, in the Alpha TV, you know, it's not necessary. We have one state holiday in France, in Austria, in Germany. That's exactly, you know, that can also change, as it has changed in the case of Germany. And so it's time also to make very clear we don't need 5 national days, and all this 3rd of March in Bulgaria can be scrapped, yeah? Because there will be no Greater Bulgaria, there will be no Greater Albania, there will be no Greater Germany, there will be no Greater Albania, whatever, I repeat myself. Yeah? But all this greater, that's of course there will be only one thing, and that's the Great Alliance of NATO and the European Union, and Macedonia and Albania and Kosovo and Serbia will be part of it. And everything else, this kind of historic complexities, which person is, like I have only this information about Goce Delchev, you know, is he now Bulgarian, Macedonian, is he a hero for both or not, yeah? Who really cares in Austria for that? You know, and you basically make business in our name. You have the power in Bulgaria to block and veto, because we fund you that you don't get in bankruptcy. We give you the power in the European Union that they have a veto, and then in our name you make such a kind of thing, and then in the moment we want to address it, you somehow fall dead and you are incapable to address anything, but you are at the same time very capable to increase the pension levels, which they just did in this caretaker government, and you are very happy to block in a populist kind of bully status. With our power, you block then the Macedonians. Yeah? And you know, here in the sunset of Durrës, I promise you, this is not the way you will make friends. You know, yeah, some people say I'm crazy, what he's talking, you know, but I'm sure that in America and in the Biden administration and in Germany, in the new government to come, they will see it quite similar. Maybe they are very polite and they say, yes, yeah, Bulgaria, wonderful, you're such a great country, and you know, we really need your support in other things as well, because you have a vote now, and we are also polite. But if you rile up the masses in this kind of incredible populist, kind of Greater Bulgarian kind of tradition against your small neighbor, and you block the progress, yeah? And then you will find a very little friends everywhere, and this is outrageous. I mean, imagine this to be done in Austria. I mean, we would call it, I don't want to go the wildest card with terms, but this is outrageous to do. And you know, what other historic justifications? Yeah, that it was, and I want to explain a bit, you know, as far as I know, I'm not the biggest expert, you know, on all the history, but the basic concept I can easily understand, yeah, that you are upset that the Greater Bulgaria of San Stefano was not accepted in the Berlin Congress, and you lost this territory of Macedonia and Thessaloniki. Yes, okay, get a grip. Yeah? And that you lost also in 1912, 1913 in the Second Balkan War. Okay, that's also understandable. The Serbs took Kosovo and Macedonia. Yes, okay, but they are now since 91 independent. They liberated themselves from Serbian occupation in 91. And that was their choice. That was recognized as well by Bulgaria. So it's recognized by the world community now. Everybody after the Prespa peace, even the Greeks. Yeah? So guys, get a grip. Yeah. And you can say historic anti-Bulgarianism, you know, who really knew what was Bulgarian in the 19th century? You know, ultimately it was a religious division only in the Ottoman Empire, and there were, these were either Christians or Muslims. That was the two division lines in the Ottoman Empire. And then it was very undefined, everything, yeah, in terms of nationality, and it was very mixed. Obviously the whole Ottoman Empire and the whole Balkan ever since was like that, yeah. And so when we then go in the retrospect and we project our own nation states of 2021, which actually, to be honest, we are a combined European Union. We have ethnically neutral member states. Yeah? That means you have to give me the right, if I choose to go to Bulgaria, I can live as a Bulgarian citizen more or less with the same rights as an Austrian. So we have overcome nationalism. I thought maybe I mixed something up. Or it's now the time for the Bulgarians to look for justice. What happened against them when they think it like that, you know, in the Yugoslavian kingdom after 1919, when it was established, or 1st of December 1918, they have then somehow worked against Bulgarian interest, obviously. And then when there was this rapprochement between Yugoslavia and Bulgaria, Bulgarian nationalists killed their prime minister for that. Yes, and then of course Bulgaria was not very popular in Macedonia, yes, and the Bulgarian invasion during the Second World War was also not very popular in Yugoslavia. Okay, it sounds quite logical. And you know that afterwards then the Yugoslavia was not so keen on, actually they wanted to have a federation. The idea was actually in the beginning to have a federation, but then was the Tito-Stalin split. So look, and what is us to blame for all these things, yeah? That this was, you can blame everything on the Germans, obviously many do, and the Austrians as the younger brother, but it's not really very much productive. And the way this is now done here, the second veto, the first one, okay, you can make some entertainment, but the second veto was really unacceptable, and I'm really starting to regret that we were so generous to the Bulgarians at that time, because the last years actually, especially Borisov, who is the great EPP leader, and he has maybe, you know, copied this kind of prosecutor general Machaika model. I mean, this is pretty unacceptable. and then all this negative publicity for EU enlargement which coming out of Bulgaria, which in reality the economic is of course very good, you know. It has the currency back, it has the flat tax, you know. This is now going into the Eurozone, and I've called so many times also already for Schengen. And it's an injustice towards your country that you're not in OECD and in Schengen, and make it very clear that this is what you want, and this is what the call is, which I have said in the Macedonian television interview as well. And, you know, I understand that. You know, that is, of course, unfairness against Bulgaria, that you are not in the OECD and in Schengen, and the Eurozone is now coming 2023. And so let's get this done. Let's get also Albania and Macedonia and Montenegro in the European Union on the same basis like you were allowed to join. Not perfect, but it was ultimately working. But when then smaller countries start to abuse the power and we vested in them, then I think the whole concept of European solidarity gets undermined, and I have to make such videos. And guys, now it's the second video. How long you want to go with that? And you know, I hear it will be more prolonged, yeah? What I read in the article now in European Western Balkans, and then they say, we continue. That's really cool. It's very popular to hit against the neighbor and to bully a smaller neighbor is very popular in Bulgarian politics. Yeah? That's also very worrying about the Bulgarian political elite. Yeah? And you know, then you have this comedian who wants to be prime minister now, and he thinks that's really cool. And I just, you know, the real problem ultimately is the weak level of leadership from Germany and from America. And then all these kind of minor celebrities from television claiming some popularity and getting some corrupt funding, build a political party, and then they say whatever kind of bullshit populism they can invent, and which is for the moment popular, and then they go ahead and they block progress for European unification. And if everybody lets them do it, because in Germany and Austria there's also a lot of people who are quite happy when the Bulgarians block that, because then enlargement is delayed, and anyhow that's not very popular with many people, and so we all lose together, and we lose together seriously, because our enemies, of course, in Russia and in China and these hostile countries, they think that we are like a joke and we are not serious. We cannot even solve the most minor issues. And then with 19th century kind of bizarre historicistic kind of arguments, we block each other and we impose certain narratives on each other, which ultimately this cannot be part of the European accession process. I mean, I've said it already many times. When we go and do all this imposement of the bilateral conflicts against each other as part of this momentary feeling of power we have, and then obviously it will be a complete disaster, the enlargement process. And that's not what I think is also in the Bulgarian interest, because you guys will lose a lot of support, and you will also need something. So that's my call for Bulgaria and Macedonia. I also try to find some beautiful professor who is speaking to me on air. I'm also listening very much, and I recommend it very heavily, this History of Bulgaria from Eric Hazley. It's a wonderful podcast, and I listen to it regularly. It's a very, very good historic podcast on Apple iTunes. And I call basically for fast-track membership of North Macedonia and Albania, and no country to block it. The way the Macedonians have to react is also very simple now, to adopt the euro directly and now, and basically bypass Bulgaria. That's the most important. Also some changes I have already called on the narrative, identity days and state celebration would be also nice signs that here there is significant progress, and also for both sides to build the infrastructure to connect the highways. Macedonia is now doing this highway towards Albania on the western side, but ask Bechtel to build the highway towards Sofia as well. It's not so complicated, it can be done relatively easy. It's already in Kumanovo, so that's on the other side, is also half of it ready in Sofia. and then you connect it. It's very good for Eastern Macedonia, for that border region, which is actually very poor, and also the Bulgarian side. I was there only in 2015 the last time, so but what I saw there was very shocking poverty in a EU member state, quite appalling, and what I hear, it has not changed so much. So these border conflicts and this kind of bilateral frozen situation are very bad for the people in the peripheral region. And as you know, in Macedonia and in Bulgaria, this border region is where the people speak a very similar dialect to Macedonian. And it's that Blagoevgrad, it's called, where they basically had this small kind of fiefdom in a way, really, this kind of terrorist cell was having this autonomous region in order to make war against Yugoslavia in the 1920s. Yeah? And you know, there is a lot of these issues in Europe. We have it in the history, and it's very brutal, it's very emotional. I understand it, and I know some of it. You know, nobody can grasp the whole complexity, because who can learn all these names of important terrorists of the 19th century, which some consider liberation fighters. I went through the museum and I showed you some of that. And you know, of course, you know, it was an anti-colonial struggle where everybody from the Christian Bulgarians and Macedonians, they have contributed, they have liberated ultimately. Actually, it was more the big powers which ultimately defeated the Turkish Empire, and it was okay. You can. This was the Bulgarians, yeah. You know, but okay, I cannot change history. It's like it is, yeah. What I can try in my little speech here is to tell everybody to be more European and to be better transatlantic partners of the Americans. Because imagine, not even me understands the whole gravity of this complexity of the situation. What exactly you want Kamala Harris then, or any senator from Idaho who comes after Biden in 24 or 28, you want them to grasp it and solve it for us, because we in Europe are totally incapable to solve the most minor issues, which then explode toxically on the European level. And then we are, we want to be ready for geostrategic commission. We want to project power globally, maybe build some aircraft carriers, yeah. And we are not able to solve the issue about the Bulgarian or Macedonian language, or about the issue of a highway between Sofia and Skopje, or the issue of is Golce Delchev now a Bulgarian or Macedonian hero? Actually, not even he would be able, when he were alive. He was killed by Turkish forces, by the Gendarmerie in 1903 during one of these uprisings and the military reprisals. And you know, when you would awaken his ghost and ask him what he is, he would be really very, very hard pressed to understand exactly what question. He was seeing himself obviously just as a Christian revolutionary against the Ottoman Muslim Empire. I'm sure the differentiation between Bulgarian and Macedonian would have escaped him in a way, as a kind of ethnic nationalistic differentiation in 21st century. And even he would be very surprised that now he is in the middle of this kind of tug of war between Macedonia and Bulgaria. Look, and this all is not so easy, because ultimately it's now we have, of course, the big success of Prespa and NATO membership of Macedonia, and Bulgaria is also. But Bulgaria is again an example where Russia buys a lot of influence in politics with the energy business. In the last 10 years, they have, of course, done enormous damage to our interest in Bulgaria. And you know, the politicians know the money of Russian gold and the color of Russian gold very well there. And so we have this kind of Hungary. It's worse in Hungary, yeah? But in Bulgaria, obviously, the population has also a kind of tendency towards Russia for these historic reasons and for this kind of cultural closeness and their idea to join as well the Soviet Union back then as a 16th republic when they were totally bankrupt, that wanted to throw themselves fall into the arms of the Soviets, which they didn't want as well. And so then you have this kind of also the Russians try to have a lot of influence in Macedonia. They are fully active with the secret service. Everybody tells me they are fully active also to work with the politics to also derail, They cannot derail and throw back the NATO status, obviously. That's impossible for them, but they can make problems. And the whole strategy of Russia, they understand the Balkans is basically, with the exemption of Serbia, is lost for them, but they can make some kind of withdrawal, kind of retreat battle, making a big nuisance for us, showing how incapable we are, and making us basically a bit ridiculous to the stakeholders. And then, they can, even when they know also that Macedonia will join the European Union, they at least have then their partners, which they have bought already in the past, which they can exploit with that and blackmail in the future. And so they are basically with a foothold in the European Union via our own weaknesses, because our weakness allows them to somehow exploit in the political divisions and buy into the political system in Bulgaria and Macedonia. And they always find the complices for that. And then they have a foothold in the European Union member state. Yeah? It's our own weakness which allows that, and our kind of lost decade where we were basically withdrawing and Russia was gaining ground. And so I think in some kind of serious effort of peacemaking and of getting things in the shape it should be, and now after the deal with Nord Stream 2, I think the expectations not only of me should be that America and Germany seriously work together to settle all these issues. I can just show a road. It's quite simple, You recognize the language, You remove some of these state holidays, in some kind of level of making it party memorial days on the side of the Macedonian. They're obviously the weaker partner here because they want to join first. And one national day is really enough for a country, to be honest. I said it very clearly already. And then also to find some bilateral commission, which is really then discussing all these complexity questions about historical narratives, on a long time frame. Therefore this we have 20 years time. It took us a long time in Austria to confess our sins, and also Bulgaria has committed a lot of crimes. They also have to go through the process of coping with their fascist past, with their communist past, and they should also do that. Also Macedonia has to go through the process of decommunization, whatever, getting rid of the ballast in their historic ideological narrative and identity building. Also Albania has to go through that. You see, it's always complicated. You of course have then, when I go through Durres, you see the big partisan fighter. In reality, I found out that was the gendarmerie who was fighting against the Italian fascists. They were basically from the kingdom. But later they were glorified then in this kind of partisan style. So, there is a lot of work to be done for the historians and for the civil society to clear up the ballast and to somehow rid it of the fascist, of the World War II tragedy, and then the communist past additionally, and then to clean up all these things and to put it in a historically accepted European global narrative of truth. It's very hard. It was taking us 40 years in Austria, and we are still working on it, and it's painful obviously, but this has to happen. And you cannot just say, we had done it in the past, we inherited it from Yugoslavia or from communist Bulgaria, and we know it because we learned it in school, and now it is like that. And then we build our museums like that. And no, there must be international experts there. There must be American history professors and also European ones to clear that thing. And it's impossible for a bilateral commission to objectively establish these things. And we cannot in the EU make our decisions in the European level somehow taken hostage by such kind of conflicts. This is not the way a powerful European Union of the future can work. And it's not, when we all talk, and in Austria less, but I follow the German debate very much about the ability to project power and take responsibility globally, and so on and so on. And all these questions of Africa, for, what we do there, and, global peace, and all this necessity to be a strong partner of America in global conflicts. And then this kind of very small, minor issues we cannot solve. I mean, that's not very credible, and that's, I think, for everybody a very big nuisance. And so that's my call. What the Macedonians obviously first of all have to do is to issue the euro now, to show that they're very pro-European, and also to make it very clear that they want to join the European Union. That would be my call here, and then even be faster than the Bulgarians, and then get going by somehow shaking up the system, and then also make clear that the reforms are very good, but it's already very well reformed. Macedonia is in many ways of doing business the most advanced country in many aspects when it comes to digitalization, and much of that is really quite impressive. Good, guys, that's my talk for Macedonia, Bulgaria. I call if somebody wants to make an interview with me on my series. I'm very, very happy. I will prepare myself diligently for that, and I will also call for that. I understand that the commission members who I contacted, they don't want to speak on YouTube now because of the sensitive phase. I can just say, sensitive phase or not, all these things we cannot solve. They are unsolvable. It's again a similar conflict like with Serbia and Kosovo. The idea that we do a dialogue, this is the typical German way, Austrian as well. We make a group seminar. We sit everybody in the chair, in the circle, and we talk about it. And they have a conflict, so we can solve it. Yeah. Okay, then I think it's impossible such conflict to be solved by the partners. There must be American firepower in it and German financial power. You must ultimately solve it financially, and also by a clear direction, and buy them into financially, institutionally. The idea that Bulgaria and Macedonia can solve that by talking about it, by so-called experts, they are maybe very good experts, but the impossibility of finding a common denominator is absolute. And the same is also with Serbia and Kosovo. I say since now a decade. Yeah? You cannot find a settlement which is mutually acceptable. You can sign and happiness, smiley faces, and now we have peace and we love each other again. This is not possible. It is a complete misperception of the deep intensity of these conflicts between the Serbs and the Albanians, between the Macedonians and the Bulgarians. Alone, this will never end. And only American power and German financial power and the inclusion in the institution, these are the three big drivers. German money and market access and infrastructure help and all this, it's now translated in EU. But then American, ultimately, clarity, you can say firepower. I don't call for America to go to the Varna city and bomb and threaten to bomb the installations. No, I'm a peaceful man, and they are our allies. But you have to talk very clearly and to threaten the stakeholders. Yeah, ultimately there is no way. The Russians do that as well. They blackmail them, but there is very clear words have to be talked here to the Bulgarian authorities and to the Macedonian authorities, as this was the case in the Greek-Macedonian settlement, and the Germans have to deploy the financial means, and then this must be settled exactly in that way, the same way as well with Serbia and Kosovo. And then we will have a major conflict, and it's already very clear, between Serbia and Croatia and Bosnia, and in between, obviously, when it comes to the EU accession of Serbia and Bosnia and Kosovo, later in the decade, I hope, and I work for that. But obviously there will be no way for a peaceful harmony between the Croatians and the Serbs, and between the Bosnians and the Serbs, and the Croatians and the Serbs, and everybody, it is obviously like this, yeah. I mean, the illusion of peace because of newfound love or suddenly established reason is absolutely illusionary. So it must be American power, German financial power and the incentives of the common integration in the European Union and NATO and the Euro, obviously. And the triple kind of pressure we have here, you know, clarity from America, financial sweetness of Germany and the EU. This is also mostly half of it German money, and then also their clarity of and the incentive of being full member in the EU, in the Eurozone ultimately, and in all the European institutions like Schengen, etc. This kind of triple incentive, pressure and threats, and these are the only way to make peace now, and then inside the European Union it will heal. It will heal like in Germany and France, but I repeat, also the Americans have insisted on Germany and France being in NATO together and have invented the European Union for that reason, and it was not nobody's real choice to join. I repeat, it was not anybody's choice. Yeah? It was clear that the 12 allies of America, they were all basically military occupied by America and liberated first, obviously. They joined NATO, and then Germany joined, Western Germany under Adenauer. They wanted it mostly, but it was American invitation, you couldn't resist, and the French were absolutely against it, against the so-called German rearmament and the NATO membership. And then later, obviously, everything developed inside. And the same is true for the EU, which was meant as a copy of the United States. And, there were basically, we did, of course, voluntarily. It was not America ordering it. But ultimately, they were pushing very hard via Monnet to get it done. And then, obviously, they were fostering it and supporting it, granting market access and supporting it very much in that phase. And then inside the friendship of Germany and France has developed, and inside also then Bulgarian Macedonian friendship will develop over time, and also Kosovo-Serbian kind of, not friendship, that's too much to ask, but this kind of rapprochement and the kind of rationality of working together as neighbors in NATO and EU will come over time inside, yeah. And the same will be true for the Croatians and the Serbs. Inside the EU, they will learn how to work together. I understand it's economically and politically beneficial. They will understand that they have common interests over time because of infrastructure, geography, and they will overcome all these kind of inherited and often very open wounds of the past, when the generations of victims of Serb aggressions live. And when we will really seriously talk about Serbian EU accession later in the decade, after they have recognized Kosovo, it will be obviously very difficult. Croatia is in the EU, Slovenia is in the EU. They have a lot of open questions with the Serbs, and each of them will have to be addressed, and I will make many videos about that one in the future. But the way Europe can work is only quite simple. We have to work step by step. Now we have this Bulgarian Macedonian thing, because Macedonia is really now in NATO, is ready, as the Europact has done a lot of reforms. So let's get that solved. And then, once Macedonia, Albania, Montenegro are in the European Union, then obviously we can address seriously Serbian and Bosnian and Kosovo membership in the European Union over time. And hopefully fast, once they have mutually recognized and all joined NATO and adopted the euro, then we can move to that level, and that will be very good. And we will then also move to include, of course, our Ukrainian, Moldovans and Georgian friends. Yeah, that's my story, my little rant for peace. I hope some of you watch me still. I wait, and I will continue to talk until the sun is set. I love it here. I'm a bit in love with tourists since I discovered it. When I worked in Pristina, it was like this. I was already before in Albania in 98 with Polo, and then I was in 2002 with Mrs. Pak, that was in SME times, and then I was in 2006 with my wife back then from Kosovo, that the Independence weekend from Montenegro. We drove over there in May, and then it was my fourth time when I came to Albania. I think I was driving then when I got this new job offer for this Austrian company, And I was driving with my winter jacket, going to Tirana, and then I was passing Durrës, and just stopped at the sea, and I fell in love with Durrës at the moment. I like it. Yeah. It was even in the winter. It's nice here. Whenever it can get very humid and cold, and even in the evening now it's getting a bit coldish. Yeah, but it's a wonderful place with these sunsets here. It's for me absolutely perfect. I love the atmosphere, and also because some people criticize me that I'm anti-Albanian and I'm making videos about the garbage situation. Please trust me, I do this in order to make it better, because serious feedback of friends is also, I think, helpful for cleaning up things and getting things done. Because when I say, oh, this is all perfect, all nice, nobody believes me, and it's also not true. Significant work has to be done. Also with the 2 billion of the Abu Dhabis, they really expect things to be good. They don't know the situation where there's no property register working, and there's this corruption and this waste. I think this was 50 years ago. They have seen such a situation in the Arab countries. They are used to really very clean and perfect situations, and so don't chase them away with this kind of non expected negative things, which unfortunately Albania has many to offer still, and they must be addressed. And this is also very important. But inside the European Union, obviously, but it would be good to get some things done to build a stronger consensus for EU membership of Albania. That's of course very important now in this strategy I'm developing, I'm rolling out. I'm actually trying as well to talk to the media. Some take me seriously, some not. That's something I have to live with. But I want to be very clear, and I'm coming back here now after 8 years more or less, since I left officially at the end of 2013, so it's 2021. I was sometimes here for other conferences and for visit to my flat and meeting some friends, but I was now, I think, 3 years I was not here, and I see too little progress. Good, Corona, there's many things and other things, but I remember that in 2014 already Albania got the EU candidate status, to my best knowledge, I'm not mistaken, and Macedonia got in 2005. Yeah, that was the timeline, and we are here still not in the opening of the negotiations. It's 2021. I mean, something is not really going so well. I think I can be open and clear on that one, and we have to address all these issues, and we have to solve them one by one, and not in the next 20 years, because as I said in my video about 30 years transition, I mean, I have also lost patience, and that's why I make this public appeal, and to everybody who wants to hear, and who doesn't want to hear is also fine. But we are getting a little bit ridiculous with our delays and timelines, and the sun is setting. So I think, do you want to wait until I'm in retirement and make another 50,000 videos about things? I love it, actually. I can do that, and I send it to Macron's team. The social media team deletes me. Anyhow, let's get serious, guys. Yeah, we have a lot of things to do to get better for the people out there. There's a lot of poverty in the world, in Europe as well, especially in Southeastern Europe, and without the institutional mechanisms to settle that inside and help the people, we will obviously see more of that, and that's not how Europe should be in 2021. And so it's a moral task, EU enlargement. It's a historic geostrategic task, and we have to get it done. And I call for the Americans to basically break up this European intransigent, collusive, corrupt system against enlargement. And with American power, we can make sure that we arm wrestle Macron and the Dutch into submission, because they are very much depending on other issues. And they basically leave America alone as the protective power and the organizing power and the funding power here in the Balkans. And that's completely unfair and unacceptable. So America has in its own strategic interest to make sure that the Europeans share the responsibility for the defense of the periphery and for the development of the periphery here in Southeastern Europe, and they have to significantly share, and that means EU membership and the euro, obviously. And if the Dutch and the French think the world doesn't concern them outside, of course we pay a heavy price for that. If the rich Western Europeans think the world doesn't really concern them, and then America has to shake them up. There's no way the Germans cannot do it, the British have gone. So it's America on which we depend more than ever. Now America is back, so America, you have to help us here. Good, that's my appeal. I think the sun is setting. Oh, it's still there. Oh, I see my wrinkles a bit here. I'm careful with the sun, but I'm getting older. This is very beautiful here. This is the sunset of Durrës, and I really love it. I think this way you can see it, and I can share some of this aspect. If you don't like my talking or my face, at least the sun is a compensation, and I think it's really beautiful. It's setting. It's a bit misty. Every day, interestingly, in this apartment, you have every evening a different atmosphere. The sunset is every day the same. That's also something really fantastic when in Austria, for example, it's one day, 3 days hot, then it's 3 days very much again bad weather and a thunderstorm. Here you have constant weather the whole summer. I have not seen any rain now. There was some rain when I was in Kosovo, yes, but since I'm here, it's absolutely fantastic. A week full of beautiful sunsets. The bad weather has gone. Yeah, there was some rain on the weekend. I was in Prešovica. Yes, of course, it's not, not without rain. The nature needs rain, obviously, as well. But you have these constant sunsets. You have in the evenings, then every evening you have a quite different form of mist one day, this kind of humidity. Then you have very clear. Then you have some air from the sea. It's really amazing place. I'm very happy here, and I love it. And yes, the sun is setting. I will go to dinner now. I give you my greetings from Pax Europiana. I hope you enjoy. I give you some things you have never heard. The Bulgarians will not enjoy this video, I understand. But guys, you have to also be serious Europeans and come back to reason, because it's not acceptable. And you remember the own poverty you were in, and then keeping people back with this kind of funny issues is very unjustifiable. So my friends from Sofia and Bulgaria, get serious, and let's get the Macedonians, Albanians, Montenegrins in the European Union. Bye from Durrës. And that was my goodbye. I said already 2024 that, and the euro, don't forget, for Albania and Macedonia, that's important. And for Serbia if they want. And for Bosnia, obviously. Good. Guys, now I'm getting hungry and tired. It was nice to chat. More to come. Don't give me too negative remarks. Anyhow, Bulgaria, get a grip. Form a government and we make peace again. And then I will do my uttermost for Schengen membership and for OECD membership. And the euro will come. So better times ahead for Bulgaria. But don't overstretch the point. And let the Macedonians join and the Albanians. Good. Bye. From Pax Europiana. Best.